Buenas tardes, muy buenas tardes. Vamos a empezar una sesión de pequeñas presentaciones. Sí, hola, hola. ¿Vale? Bueno, esto va sobre todo dirigido al público hispanohablante. Las presentaciones que vamos a hacer ahora son en inglés y es los proyectos que podéis ver en la sala como parte de la exposición, presentando 5 minutos cada uno, así que Marketa, Dolejsova, por favor, pasa al escenario que va. She's going to present this. It's going to be in English, so welcome everyone, Marketa.
Yes, thank you, Felipe. And welcome everyone at the ExP session, officially titled Pecha Kucha, but we are not going to strictly follow the Pecha Kucha format. It's really more informal introduction to some of the creative projects, the so-called experimental productions that are being presented here in Artilleria at the exhibition. So some of the authors kindly agreed to give us very short 5 minutes overviews of what these projects are about and how they have been developing them. And of course, then you have for the rest of the evening the chance to go around the exhibition and actually see those pieces installed and interact with them in a more engaging way. But we will also have a keynote after this session, so I would also like to point your attention to that. But yeah, I would not be talking very long right now, and instead I would introduce the first speaker, who is already standing here. And it's Felipe from Zemos, who is going to introduce the Commons Poly project, which is the board game that you might see just there. Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marketa. I didn't hear an applause for Marketa. So, before to quickly tell you Commons Poly, I just wanted to do something because having this screen and this sound, you know, this deserves something. So this is a short performance which is playing my favorite song in the last month. So it should be. No se oye. So the experiment is not working. Louder, o sea, ponlo más alto, más alto. Okay, this is from Bad Bunny. I'm sorry that it's not sounding good, but I just wanted you to dance for a while, but let's keep it. So this is a shitty transition in which you can see my face when I was 14 years old. And I was obsessed with Captain Tsubasa, never-ending football courts, also with MacGyver because he was able to solve a terrorist attack with a bubble gum, and also with Darth Vader. At that point, I was also obsessed with Monopoly. I was that obsessed that I was bringing money from my Monopoly in my home to come to my friend's house and, you know, use my money in the other person's house. So yeah, I was a bad person. But then I joined Zemos 98, and then I discovered cooperation, mutual support, intersectionality, etc., etc. And that's how I ended up with my colleagues from Zemos working in an anti-monopoly. So in 2015, the game Commons Poly was born. But before that, I want to tell you that Monopoly went, the sound, me está volviendo loco el retorno. The Monopoly went that crazy that we have Monopoly 4-nut version. We have Monopoly for millennials, which is my favorite because if you can't read, forget real estate, you cannot afford it anyway. So that's so sincere from the system, from capitalism, like you cannot afford it. So now you cannot even own resources. So to rescue the history of Elizabeth Maggie, the original creator of Monopoly, which was called the Landlord game at the beginning of the 20th century, she basically invented a game to prevent monopolistic practices and not to celebrate them. She was not able to commercialize the game, and she sold the copyright license to the Parker Brothers. As you can imagine, the Parker Brothers turned the game into what we know today, so celebrating capitalism, accumulation of resources, etc. So as part of a festival that we used to organize in Seville, and we did 17 editions, we had a huge gathering of activists, artists, and people from the academia. And one of the group had as a goal to basically design an anti-monopoly. So in 2015, the first prototype was created. And after that, many people came to us like, where is this game? But the game was just there. It was just in a paper and with different pieces and with a document with different rules. So after the festival ended, we started taking care of different versions. And after a few years and through different projects, we have delivered the 4th edition, which is called the Green Edition. And it's basically available freely for everyone who wants to download the files because it's an open source board game. But it's also, you can also buy it to support the project and to print more copies. It has been translated into 6 different languages, and there are also different versions. So in about 50 minutes, I know the presentations will go on, but I will be hosting a gameplay in which you can basically cooperate against the speculator, because we have a bad guy in the game and it's the speculator. In this case, I will be playing that role, but you could be, you know, these commoners or these shitty people that want to change the world, all these things. So thank you so much, and join us if you want.
I have mine. Thank you for that. Yes, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to present now some ghosts in the machine. I'm going to present now the Open Forest project, which is an experimental design research inquiry into various forests and forest data developed by the Open Forest Collective, which is Andrea, Jess, Christina, and me. So we are 4 creatures and design researchers who are based in various countries around the world, including Finland, Czech Republic, Colombia, and Australia, which are also the main field sites where we conduct our forest research experiments. So in the countries where we are from, we have all experienced forest as sites for rejuvenation and peaceful recreation. But of course, we have also encountered that kind of positivist environmental policies and the projects that treat forests as some kind of quantifiable resource to be used, for instance, for carbon sink cultivation. And this project, we kind of noticed, often see forest as some kind of vegetal techno-solution or vegetal solution for climate crisis. So the examples here include, for instance, the mass tree planting campaigns that are promoting the idea that the more trees we plant, the closer we get to some kind of climate crisis resolution. And many of these projects have actually failed and turn out to be rather ineffective or even harmful, mainly because they don't really acknowledge that both forests and climate change are complex eco-social phenomena that really cannot be treated, you know, in this universalizing, generalizing way. And there has been this ongoing call for different approaches to forest management that would shift towards the understanding of forests as sites for multi-species entanglements among plants, animals, trees, humans, and other forest creatures, arguing that it is exactly this relational interaction what makes forest a regenerative and hopeful space. And this is also what stands in the center of the Open Forest project, where we are looking at how various stakeholders make sense of forests, how they produce data about forests, and we are experimenting with how this data can be produced and understood otherwise in the relational, more than human way. And in practice, how are we doing this? So we are doing this through a series of experimental forest walks, inviting both human and non-human participants to walk with us through various forest areas or forest patches. And we basically leverage walking as a design research method and a way of becoming more responsive to place in a playful and very embodied sensorial manner. And here we are inspired by the artistic format of derived drifts, which you might know from the Situationist International strategies, which are these spontaneous journeys through landscape. And we are also drawing on what we call feral methodologies, where feral basically refers to something that is developed within human infrastructures, but unfolds beyond human control. So in our case, that means that we are kind of letting the walks unfold beyond our full control as design researchers and humans. So these walks that we do, they vary in form. We walk both physically, but also cyber-physically, using video conferencing to enable participants located elsewhere to walk with us remotely. And each walk is guided by some human or non-human navigator, like, for instance, a dog or an algorithm or a data scientist or researcher that has a good sense of the local landscape. And at the end of each walk, we share our experiences from the walking in the form of short stories, which we collect through our online feral map that enables people to attach their stories to specific forest locations or even to specific trees and specific creatures in the forest. And these stories then present one type of forest data that we collect in the project. So to give you a glimpse of our field sites, in Finland, we have been walking in the Hitiala forestry field station, which is a highly instrumentalized forest where we learn about the local sensors and data collection strategies under the guidance of local scientists. Quite contrasting context, then provide a forest garden on Chagras in Tabanoc, Colombia, which is the ancestral territory of Kamensa people. And here we walk, or especially Andrea walks, under the guidance of Kamensa women, which are the local indigenous forest guardians. Then in Bohemia, we walk in the protected forest area called Krivoklatsko. And there the walks are led by my dog companion Chewy, who guides the walks in the very feral manner, where we basically follow his sense of direction without having any map or any clear goal, waiting what will come our way and what the forest will reveal to us, under the sensorial guidance of Chewy. And in Australia, we walk in the Melbourne urban forest, navigated by our digital More Than Human portal that includes various prompts inspired by the derive drift situationist strategies that I mentioned before. So through these stories collected from the walks, we are questioning what can constitute a forest dataset, how it can be produced and by whom, while shifting the focus towards more experiential insights shared by diverse walkers, including scientists, researchers, designers, data managers, indigenous forest guardians, but also dogs. And yeah, so our aim basically with these walks is to create an occasion for playful encounters and lively discussions about forests and related environmental issues. And we really aim to reach beyond discussing these issues just in theory, but we want to bring them on a local, personal scale and explore them through very down-to-earth means. And the project is ongoing, and yeah, if you would want to walk with us ever, just let us know, please. And that's all from me. And now we have Isabel, I think. Yes.
Hi everyone, I hope, good evening, hope you're all having a great day. I was very inspired by all the wonderful flowcharts that have been shared during the conference session, so I tried to pull a little of that into my slides tonight. First, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Isabelle Beavers. I'm a transdisciplinary artist. My work focuses on the climate crisis and looking at different moments of climate crisis as opportunities for adaptation and mourning and then future making and building better futures, better ecological futures. I'm also a curator and work as artistic director at an artside tech organization called Super Collider. We do a lot of exhibitions, community building, and professional development programs for artists in the Los Angeles area. Also am an educator working in many different contexts. And these words help describe many of the different things I do, but I think of those boundaries really dissolving and all of this work being part of the eco-social transformation, to use one of the creature's words. So it's sort of this whole matrix and constellation of all the work that I find contributes to all of these projects that I do. And my project for the experimental productions is called Nocturne. Few short descriptive sentences. It's a series of wild altars that's meant to be experienced at dusk, dawn, or at night. It highlights collaborations with more than humans and the elements that support us all in our life on this planet. It's a momentary rupture that asks us to generate new eco rituals. And it's also an experiment in community caretaking and mourning. And this project has some research questions that really got me thinking about the direction this work would go, that are overarching to my practice as a whole, but also really specifically apply to this project Nocturne. So I was asking, what does caretaking of urban wilds look, feel, and smell like? How can we adapt using relocalization practices, to reference Arturo Escobar? What new relationships are emerging, and how can we mourn and generate hope? So I'll take you on a quick little journey, hopefully quick, through the process of Nocturne, how it emerged and how it has iterated over the last few years. It's definitely shifted and morphed, and I've tried to let that process be really emergent and shifting as the project has gone on. But this project started during the pandemic when everyone was engaging digitally, and I really missed the opportunity to be in physical space with other humans. And it was a time when we couldn't go see art in an exhibition space. There was no gallery openings, no museums. And I was spending a lot of time outdoors and really struck by the feeling, the magical feeling that I got when I was in these outdoor spaces, and was really interested in asking an audience that might typically go see art in a gallery to be outdoors and go witness something that is already existing. I was also particularly struck by these really sensory moments, thinking about shifting sense hierarchies. So when the sun is going down, a lot of times of the year in Los Angeles, there's jasmine blooming, and as the sun sets, the flower petals open and the smell becomes really strong just as the sun is setting. So I wanted to call upon those moments that really highlight these less visible or more hidden elements and circumstances that support us that we might overlook. There are these secret hidden staircases all over my neighborhood in LA that are these really amazing moments of urban wild where there are butterflies, birds, and lots of different species that I wanted to call attention to. So I decided to create a series of wild altars that would sort of pop up in these hidden staircases and that would be stumbled upon by visitors on their typical normal daily routine or route, and hope that these altars would ask them to look again and reconsider what is around them all the time. I was also really inspired by Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli. If anyone's seen Spirited Away, there's this really beautiful phenomenon of the spirit world coming alive at night, and I wanted to create something that had that feeling that you can't really see it or detect it during the day, and once the nighttime comes, it becomes alive and sort of enlivens something that wasn't there before. So the pictures in the middle here are some of the light sculptures that I created, again with this hope of just calling attention to what is already there, the magic that is already in these spaces. Each altar had a QR code, so one could stumble across them and see what the project was about. And the forms iterated from being sculptures that were outdoors to being exhibited in indoor spaces and focusing on different elements in different parts of California. And the project has grown now in sort of a backwards way to, I've made a video, a concept video that typically would go first, but in this process seemed to sort of crystallize a lot of the ideas I was thinking about with the project. While this project was quite physical, the social processes were really the most important part to me, and they were a lot more entangled in the making of the work than these slides would lead you to believe, but I really wanted to call out some of these key processes that happened through the course of the project. The first being the community caretaking, the experiment of that. I was worried in my context in LA that one, I would make the neighbors angry by putting these sculptures randomly in our neighborhood, or that they would be vandalized. And what I found was they were actually really welcomed and folks were willing to caretake them alongside me. This opened new spaces for me to get to know people in my neighborhood I didn't know before. I was able to email some folks and ask them, like, hey, would you mind if I put some art on the staircase? And inadvertently created these oblique relationships with folks that I hadn't known before. There was workshops that happened as well, both digitally and in person. And then, of course, now we are here gathering at the Creatures Festival, which I think of as another one of these social processes to be able to put the work in context with the other projects. So you can see one of the versions of the altars here. It is in the dark cave area over there. And there's a QR code for the video that goes alongside of it. So thank you all for listening, and I'll pass it to the next group.
Thank you for that, Isabel. And now we have, give me a second. So we have here, wait, well, not that one, this one. And okay, perfect. Now we have Ruth from Furtherfield presenting the Treaty of Finsbury Park 2025.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. I'm Ruth Catlow. I'm the co-founder director of Furtherfield. We grew up with the web when the web seemed to be a utopian place. I now describe myself as a recovering web utopian. Never going to fall for that again. But here we are. This is our gallery space. So we now straddle digital and physical spaces. This is us looking at the gallery. And this is looking from the gallery out into this public park in London, which is used by people who speak 200 different languages, very typical London metropolitan, super diverse space. I'm going to talk about Treaty of Finsbury Park. This is a project to help people connect with why biodiversity matters. The UK has lost more biodiversity than any G7 country and is in the worst 10% globally. It plays a vital role in climate change resilience. And the greatest biodiversity is now found in urban settings because of monocultural agricultural practices globally. So urban parks now play, sorry, I'm choking on my mask. I'm kind of shielding, but I don't want to catch something from the mic, so let's see. So the question we're playing with is, what part do all the different species play in a thriving urban park? And how could they be managed for multi-species justice and possibly intervene in infrastructures of colonial domination? So we're connecting biodiversity and justice by inviting participants to explore what it would mean to consider more than human rights at two levels. So basic rights, this is the right not to be terrorized or killed, and membership and citizen rights. So this is access to services like food, sanitation, education, participation in political decisions. And to think about what the role of cultures is in social justice. And we're doing this through live action role play. So this is immersive fiction. And this is most simply understood as a game of make-believe, what we all did as children. We say, now we're in a hospital, I'll be doctor, you be nurse, you're going to be the patient, let's see what happens. This is live action role play. And in the Treaty of Finsbury Park, we have, it's enabled by a new technology, a new fictional technology called the sentient style. So, oh good, it's playing us a little background music. Okay, so the sentient style is a technology that allows fauna and fauna to suddenly understand and communicate with each other. And in the Treaty of Finsbury Park, it also plays an additional role of matching species to humans, or humans to species, so that they can represent them in an interspecies assembly. And I was matched to the dogs, who have a very special relationship with humans. So I'm really excited now to demonstrate the sentient style in action by handing over to Chewy the dog. Just so happens that my dog is also called Chewy, like Marketa's. I promise you, not all dogs are called Chewy. Apparently, Chewy tells me. Okay, so I don't know how to do this with the mic. Here I am, sitting in this hand. Chewy's sitting in this hand. They look at each other. They take in each other's bodies. They understand each other. They turn to each other with curiosity. Okay, I'm super excited here to present to you. I've never done this before with humans. So 2 years ago, I was in the park with my humans are quite good. Lots of them are crap, but my humans are quite good. Finsbury Park's amazing. I have a ball, we run around, there's all these great friends. But 2 years ago, the trees started speaking to me. And they were saying, like, we've got to get together, we've got to do something about these dreadful humans, like they're doing all these horrible things. And then I heard from the grass, and then it turns out that I'm a bit of a problem too. So, but I just want to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing. So there was protest, there was all kind of mayhem. People kept trying to eat each other. And we decided, we understood that what we needed to do was to make a space where we could live in our habitats, have the best time, and really focus on what mattered to us. And the way to do this was to communicate between ourselves and the humans by making a treaty. So a treaty is going to be drawn up, but first we have to make a festival so we understand each other's cultures. Oh, sorry, the sentient style is going a bit weird. So. These are the mentor species of the park. We're all representing all this different work that we do together. The grass provides all these herbs and spices and wonderful feelings under our feet. The trees clean the air. The beetles and the insects do the work of the underground. They're all not very happy with me. We issued a call to action for humans to work with us, to understand what the problem was. And this was the video we made. We're very pleased with it. It's been working amazing. I'm not going to show you, there's not enough time. The park was a place for protest. Now we're working out how we can live together there. The focus is on biodiversity habitats. We have the old forest, the new forest, the wildflower meadows, and we're working out which of these places will host our festival. Here we are playing, these are the local dignitaries that gathered in January. This is them honouring the old forest with a ritual of grievances and reparations. Here they honour the younglings, how we care for the vulnerable the young ones. Here we're working out how to have a party, how to sow the seeds of the future in our wildflower meadows. And here we are having our assemblies online. They've been an enormous success. There's no human faces to mess it all up. And we have these amazing debates. We talk about which festival will take place, where it's going to happen, etc. And these are the things that we're looking to do, for the festivals to do. So which interspecies festival will we stage? Will it be the Festival of Poo? Will it be the interspecies spa and daycare? We have 9 proposals to pick from. It's our park, so it's our pick. And we will host this festival next year as a celebration of the forthcoming treaty, which we will then all sign. This is what humans say. Who cares about what the humans say? Now I need to hand back and get off the stage. 1 second. That was chewy. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chewy. Thank you, Chewy. I will just find your presentation.
Hello. Thank you from my side as well. So happy to be here with all of you. I think I have not presented myself yet, so very happy to be here to do that as well. So my name is Sonja Nielsen, and I come from a design agency called Hellon. I work as a senior designer and sustainability specialist there, and I'm here to tell you about the Sustainable Futures game, which is a design game for co-imagining alternative futures. As we all represent rather different creative practices, I think it's perhaps good to tell a bit about our practice. So we are a strategic and service design agency based in Helsinki and in London, and we work together with public sector organizations and also private sector organizations with several development projects, and thus the potential kind of transformational impact that we create with our work always comes with and through our partners. I think that's a good background information to understand before I start kind of presenting the game. Through working with such diverse organizations, we've come to realize that at the same time when people seem to be rather, let's say, anxious about the future and also kind of desperate about the future, still institutional actions for actually making a change seem rather incremental, and we're still very stuck in the status quo, also in the discussions that we are having on sustainability with these institutions. And of course, there are several reasons behind that, but I think that also, like, at least as far as we've understood, we seem to be quite unable to see the consequences of today's actions, and also to perceive that future could be different than it is at the moment. And that was the starting point for our project, and that's why we are moving our attention now towards the future. So try for a moment to imagine how the future could be like in 20 years' time in your hometown or in the society at large. What kind of pictures come to your mind when you think about the future? I'm not sure about your pictures, but mine are somewhat desperate, and especially in the context of environmental crisis, that's quite common. It seems like when we think about the futures, we often approach them through dystopian narratives, but also sometimes, in rare cases, through utopian dream worlds. But it seems like when we try to think about, let's say, desirable or potential futures, we're maybe not that practiced to do that. It seems more difficult for us to imagine something in between the utopian and dystopian worlds, which we could call the desirable futures, that are kind of reachable, but at the same time radically different from the status quo. So the development of our project started from this notion. Let's see if I can see the notion here. How can we steer our action towards a future we cannot imagine? The game is designed. So the development of the project started from this notion, and we were also thinking about what do we even perceive as desirable or sustainable futures, as this world is so scattered where we live at the moment. And the way we see sustainability is so different. So sustainability is different to me, and it is different to you, as well as words such as just or resilient. So the development of the game started from this notion that we need to collectively become better at imagining alternative futures and potential pathways towards them. So the game is designed for decision makers and developers within public and private organizations, to offer creative and thought-provoking ways of thinking differently, to kind of bring in new thinking. The purpose of the game is to help players imagine a desirable future state of a commonly decided city. So this city could be, for instance, Seville in 2030. So the whole co-creation session takes approximately 3 hours and can be facilitated as a physical board game or a digital board game because we have developed the digital version also due to the COVID-19 happening in 2020 or starting in 2020. In the first part of the game, the players collectively write a fictional story which depicts a desirable future state of that commonly decided city. And the fictional story also evolves through several different tasks, for instance, visual probes, probing questions, and questions related to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. During the game session, the participants create the city together from different perspectives, combining kind of the individual, the communal, the material, and also the political aspects of the city. So there can be questions such as how are people taking care of their well-being, or which spaces are shared and which spaces are owned, or how do people address the questions of equality, for instance. In the second stage of the game, the players get to hear the co-narrated story and thereafter get to select certain elements of the story that they found very desirable and promising, and then identify actions towards those futures. I think it's important to notion that this is not a board game. It's called a design game, which basically combines co-design and playful elements. And these playful elements are the rules and the play elements, the different cards that you can see on the board, that kind of enhance this play spirit, where people kind of step out from their own roles and become something else. And this is especially important in institutional context, where we have tried the game, because then people are usually so stuck in their kind of institutional political roles. The final version of the game has been tested in 6 game sessions with public servants, sustainability professionals, companies, academics, and university students, and maybe most interestingly with a political party in Finland. So they're actually a parliamentary party, and we had representatives also from the Finnish parliament, which is quite interesting. And of course, Finland is also a very small city, so that was country, so that was possible. According to the participants, the game session supported a more holistic understanding of the interdependencies between different social questions, such as how the ecological or social questions are interlinked, and also kind of help to get a more holistic outlook on the future, or the social outlook on the future. The participant also said that it helped to better understand the long-term consequences of today's decisions and to perceive their institutions' role in contributing to these futures. But I would say, lastly, before closing, that perhaps the most important kind of aspect that I think the game facilitated was these discussions around desirability and hopefulness. In the end, contemplating about desirable futures always requires a debate on what kind of future we want to be building and what we find desirable, as it's different for everybody and all institutions. I cannot come to say, as said, what is sustainable from my perspective to our partners, but what I can do is to start kind of fostering this long-term thinking or collective sense-making and imagination within these organizations that perhaps can spark new type of thinking within them as well. So in that sense, I think that this was also an example of how creative practices can, within and with organizations, also spark new thinking and maybe new ways of acting as well in the future. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Sonja. Okay. And the next one will be me. Can we see it? Yes, perfect. Okay. So I'm here again. And I'm going to present another ExP, which is called Experimental Food Design for Sustainable Futures. Which was a workshop that we held in a conference setting at the Designing Interactive Systems conference in 2020, together with a group or network of practitioners called Feeding Food Futures. So we are basically a loose network of co-authors, mostly design researchers, but also artists and other practitioners interested in using experimental co-creative methods, playful methods to address food sustainability issues. So before I go to the workshop overview, I would just quickly explain why are we interested in food. So there are several reasons for us to work with food. First, the human food practices are among the most significant contributors to urgent eco-social challenges. So we are starting from this recognition that the current ways of how food is being produced, distributed, consumed, and disposed of really need to urgently change. But at the same time, food practices are also very relatable and familiar topic of concern for many people. So it is this kind of social glue that brings people together. And food and foodstuffs are also materially fantastic. So we are kind of using them as this edible, very sensorial, perishable, and also compostable design material in our work. So with this in mind, we are basically playing with food, like including food in multiple roles, as a topic of concern, as a biomaterial to design with, and also as a familiar activity that can serve as a good starting point for co-creative thinking and reflection. But now to the workshop. So we held this 2 days workshop online because of COVID and had 33 participants from 16 countries. And in the 2 days, basically, that the workshop took, we had slightly different focus of activities, but all the activities were revolving around the co-creation of imaginative recipes for regenerative modern human food futures, through which we were aiming to rethink the current socio-economic and human-centric hierarchies in food systems. So the workshop on the day 1 was focused on the interdependencies between food, social practices, and technology. And we were imagining, together with the participants, various future visions for fantastical and sustainable modern human food technology cultures. And then on the day 2, we were building on the activities and discussions on the day 1, and we were kind of trying to further unfold this potential of the fantastic food imaginaries to develop more plausible visions that could be implemented already in the world as it exists today. So the tasks for the day 1 of the workshop was basically to prototype recipes for fantastic picnic meals, and we used a variety of design tools for that, including this deck of future food tarot cards, which present imagined food technology tribes, such as datavores or gut gardeners. And everyone at the workshop was asked to select a card from the deck and choose some food item from their home that represents the food practice or food tech practice that was shown on the card. And these food objects, together with the cards, were then added to so-called food swap pantry, which we designed in Miro, and we used it as the main source of ingredients for the prototyping of the picnic meal recipes. So to give you an example of one such recipe that came out of this process is this cannibalistic picnic for Homo sapiens recipe, which reflects on the broken global food supply chains and unevenly distributed food resources. So the recipe basically proposes the human body as a farm and a local source of nutrients to feed both human and also non-human consumers. So the recipe is really asking questions such as, what if breastfeeding reaches beyond the mother-child relationship? What if we are using human stem cells in lab-grown meat processes, etc.? And through these questions, it really tries to raise for debate the cultural taboos that prevent people often from eating themselves in some kind of ethical and consensual exchange. And then in the day 2, we basically worked again in Miro and prepared 5 virtual pantries, which were pre-stocked with examples of existing modern human food practices across the areas of food production, food procurement and distribution, food consumption, processing and disposal. So on this day, the activities were a little bit more focused, and they were centered around these 5 specific food system processes areas. And one example of a recipe coming from the day 2 was the recipe titled Less Than Human, question mark, focusing on the food disposal area of food system. And it was reflecting on the distinct values around food waste and waste in general, and how these values differ across cultures and also across social classes. So I don't really have time to go in depth with this recipe here, but you can see the recipes printed just there. But yeah, basically, in short, the recipe was kind of discussing how one human's trash can becoming another human's treasure, and brought to attention some of the paradoxes embedded in the concept of modern human food practices as being by default better and more sustainable, while pointing out that there are many marginalized individuals that are participating in the socio-economic food chain who are sometimes considered as less than human. So in that sense, if you really want to bring forward the modern human idea as something that is to contribute towards sustainability, we really need to first make sure that as humans, we are living in some kind of respectful, relational setting. So we value each other, basically. And yeah, in short, these recipes, together we created 11 of them at the workshop, were later compiled into this open access cookbook that is available online for free. And it is also shown here in Artilleria, so you can get a printed copy. And just to say that we are also very proud because the cookbook got published in this Responsible Research and Innovation Toolkit by EU. So it was a confirmation for us that you can do playful stuff, and even people in EU can respond to it. Yeah, so this is all from me now. If you want to see more, you can go to the foodfutures.group website. And thank you for listening, and I will clear the stage for the next speaker.
Hello, I am going to impersonate Genevieve today. Unfortunately, she got sick and cannot be with us, but she had very cleverly prepared her presentation on time and written a script, which she has facilitated me, and I promise to do my best work. So my name is Andrea, but tonight I'm going to be Genevieve. And I'm going to talk about Yarmouth Springs Eternal, a community arts, walking and nature project. The project developed in response to research on the vastly different experiences of COVID happening in the UK. Whilst there was inequality of access to green and natural spaces for some, simultaneously other groups were hugely benefiting from accessing nature, walking and arts for their well-being. The same barriers and challenges at large in wider society were being amplified. Genevieve thought, how can I use my privilege? How can I use my skills built over a decade of community arts practice? What can I do as an artist living and working in my hometown? From this, the seed idea for Yarmouth Springs grew. So Genevieve and her collaborators brought together the perspectives of people with lived experiences of homelessness and migration into conversations about nature, as well as those taking part in self-reporting loneliness, mental health challenges, and issues with addiction. Over the 2 years, they worked with a range of creative practices, including writing, drawing, photography, sensory walking activities, and in an own exhibition last year, where they had wormery and leaf fermenting foods and drinks. This is the, okay. Yes. When Genevieve looks back at this photo, she realized that well as the brassica flowering, the sign to the right says live entertainment. During their walks, they noticed the power and resilience of nature in the streets. Their group has developed to make a space for unheard voices and those with an interrupted connection to home or place. The relationship between these life stories and self-seeded plants noticed around the town have become a symbol of their respect for our lives and all journeys. They're not exclusive about how they define nature. They've explored the difference between gardened and wild space, of valued and neglected areas, and how this mirrors particular social conditions too. They see themselves as part of the ecosystems of the Great Yarmouth and explore what living in Great Yarmouth means, whether people are here or there through choice or necessity. Last year's program included 6 weeks of exhibitions, a community and a public artist-led program, a conference, resource booklets, and more. It was exhausting, says Genevieve. This year, they slowed down and nurtured their roots, built on the valuable space for reflection throughout, and between March and April, the group took part in workshops led by 3 visiting artists and 1 visiting ecologist. The group then supported to design and lead their own events for the public during Creativity and Wellbeing Week in May. The community participants were paid to lead the public events or receive vouchers if they were accessing universal credit benefits. The public events included things like mindful eating, slow conscious walking, collecting words in Portuguese or Spanish, etc. What does nature mean to you? The group had a rhythm to the meetings that opened and closed its session with reflective conversations, which were discussed, noted down, and recorded. What she noticed as a thread running throughout was the link between nature, health, and well-being. The group spoke about connecting with nature as a self-nurturing act, a sharing that helped them feel calm or energized, but also about the concerns about climate, worry about the future and its destructive power. They reflected on the cultural differences too. For example, Ligia, one of the artists and participants, said that in Portugal, cemeteries are serious and sacred spaces to honor the dead, or they are like that. So she was surprised to see that in Great Yarmouth, they had picnics in the cemetery. So Genevieve has been really stretched through this experience to reconsider her perceptions of participant and facilitator. They have embodied these roles throughout the project and sometimes simultaneously. As Holly Sanford, one of the artists, said, as artists we often talk about co-production and collaboration as a way of working, but that's often offered as a limited choice by the facilitators. Yarmouth Springs Eternal is not just co-production, it's simply production. At their closing session in June, they had a conversation about vulnerability. Vulnerability can be powerful energy, but without resources and support, it can be very exhausting. So Genevieve wants to finish with the project credits and the people that help her, and thanks for listening. She has a beautiful stand up there with some of the materials resulting from this process. And now we welcome the next presenter.
Hello. Thank you very much, creatures, for having me here. My name is Michal Mitro. I'm an artist and researcher, and I'll be presenting this project, which is called Open Urban Forest, where I'm acting as a guide and a facilitator. So, as you can see already, we're going for a walk. And this is the project site, the Open Urban Forest site, and we're starting from the street level, and we'll climb all the way up. And yeah, the Open Urban Forest is everywhere in between. Open Urban Forest, you're gonna hear this a lot. It's a 6-month research project exploring how the human and more than human work with and around each other, which I thought this access route is a nice metaphor of, since it looks as it does. And these explorations are situated in this specific context of a nature-reclaimed communal garden located on the hills of Svratka River in Brno in Czech Republic. And even if this place is not being shaped directly by humans as a garden anymore, it is still shaped by a multitude of human-initiated contexts, such as traffic infrastructure extension, drought, and municipal urban planning. And at the very same time, it is actually becoming increasingly feral and harder to access. So throughout the project duration, I invited guests from fields of architecture, forestry, visual arts, field recording, and performance to visit the forest and conduct their research. They were invited to observe, analyze, abstract, and speculate on meanings and data sets that the forest conveys to them and to which they happen to incline. And equipped with unique tools and knowledges and viewpoints, we were jointly hoping to shape an intersubjective, as opposed to just subjective, myself, representation of the forest that would reflect it in its stacked and multifocal nature. And also by doing so, we are trying to set an inviting and supportive base for the interspecies dialogue and reinforced dynamics that would make the space open, urban, and forest. So my story in the garden, which is now turning forest, dates 8 years back, during which I went through various ways of approaching it, from a very top-down and directive, which was basically gardening, through struggling and learning from the struggles, mainly with the agents that act there already before me and still do, and finally to simply just sitting and listening. And this is where this project starts, with the motivation to start and explore the relationship anew and to conduct a proper mutual introduction between humans and more than humans that jointly navigate the space. And even if this motivation was my own and subjective and also very site-specific, I believe in many aspects it can be abstracted to other scenarios of human-nature interaction. So by now, the data collection part of the project is mostly done. Also, some of it will continue further. And part of it is processed into this artwork over there, where you can see the actual terrain of the garden and some videos that I made, and also the documentation of the groups working on the spot. But I've made some, I couldn't say conclusions, but observations that are actually mostly intuitive and emotional, but nevertheless I find them quite important. So what I feel is the most prominent and reoccurring feature that I sense across all the expert groups has to do actually less with exploration and explanation of the space or whatever we've encountered there, than it has got to do with reflecting on our very human nature and our own habits and preconceptions and imperfections and of course failures in multitude of shapes. And so the threads that unite each input from the guests are first and foremost the human condition, the anthropocentrism, and only second the context of the forest where we've performed our activities. So we were constantly reminded that it's us humans conducting the research and not the other way around, and that the motivations are ours and the egos are ours and the failures are ours as well. And these first unintended lessons we've learned before even actually analyzing any data maybe quite banal, but they actually can be easily overlooked. Oh, my presentation time is over, but I'll quickly share my 4 points with you. So number 1 is being aware of who and how we are and why we act as we do. So that's starting with reflection on our very humanity, and then extending it and deconstructing it towards race, class, gender, all the way down to personal motivations. Second would be actually expecting and accepting our human nature and using it as a departure point for informed action. I think that's number 1 lesson for me. Third, being able to appreciate the lack of acting and lack of personhood of the modern human world, which I don't think implies a lack of agency or intelligence. And lastly, learning from our natural surroundings that we too can sit still, listen, attend, and grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. And now we have Martyna. Let me just find your slides.
That's the last one. So I will. Ah, that's the beginning. Okay, fantastic.
You can do one reshuffle. This one is first.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And this one is last. Oh, thank you. Yes.
From this one.
Yes. I have only 3 slides, but I want to speak about the Domia Initiative that I'm co-running since 2018. Domia is an experiment of collective care, as we call it. It's based in a ruin that we took over, creating association, doing it in a formal way, and sort of renting this ruined building for 10 years. So immediately after doing this, even though it was not a very good deal, but we became sort of a player with the city. But Domie, the name, comes from the word dom, which in Polish language means home. And we really wanted to relate to this closeness and, safety feeling that you might have with your close ones, family members, and so on. But we changed the word from the masculine noun to a neutrum, opening it up, sort of queering it, making out of it sort of rhizomatic nest more than a shelter for those who actually need one. Maybe never had, maybe had to leave it, maybe, there was for groups who were in some way maybe underrepresented, maybe excluded, maybe not very welcome here or there, or in general struggling. So, and we became, it's multifunctional space with different art, activism, mental health, and so on activities. But I have only 3 slides, so I wanted to sing you a song, a part of a song that I wrote in 2018 after several months of working in this ruin. So somehow I thought about it just coming here, that it maybe reflect the state of mind I had back then. I am precarious being. Let me be myself. I am rooted nowhere, uprooted feeling I have. When you tell me where my home is, I will not believe. Forever I am lonely, forbidden fruit of hell, forever and ever alone in this world. I hope for deep sort of grounding, this cozy feeling sometimes I have with queer, with thieves, with ugly. And now I need to continue because there is very limited time. There is a neighbors, so we established a cultural running space, but we still miss the contact with neighbors. Our story happening from March till now, beginning basically thanks to creatures, you can somehow track and observe in this exhibition there. I will not speak anymore about it because I spoke about it before, but I just wanted to move to another slide. Yeah, so in 2020, Domia was cooperating with Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw, and we made our statement in this sort of hashtag, Ruins Unite. I like to use the metaphor of Marco Casagrande, who is based in Helsinki, that says that independent initiatives are sorts of acupuncture needles to the cramped, numb and tense body of governing people, institutions, capitalism, systems, and so on. So we are these healing little places that somehow work and activate or create a spam for all those that doesn't find themselves in a normative, order of things. So please ask for help, stay honest, and Ruins Unite. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This was big. And now we have The Fallen Clouds by Josefina and Daniela. Yes, so I will pass the floor to you.
Perfect. Can we just... Perfecto.
Hola a todas y todos. Espero que estén muy bien. My name is Daniela Camino. I am a filmmaker and producer, and alongside with me is Josefina Buschmann. She's a researcher and a media artist. We are here with our installation, The Fallen Clouds, which is over there. You can check it out afterwards. We're very excited to be here in Sevilla. Our project started its investigation in 2019. Josefina was doing her master's in MIT and studying digital infrastructures. So when she arrived back to Chile, we started collaborating together, starting to understand the impacts of these digital infrastructures in our territory. And in that moment, our former right-wing president, Sebastián Piñera, inaugurated a new data center of Google in Santiago and celebrated Chile as one of the leading economies, pioneers in digital technologies, without really reflecting on the consequences on our territory and to our communities. So what the Fallen Clouds want to tension is the impacts of these digital infrastructures, these so-called clouds of storage, how they affect the territory and the communities. So what we want to do is kind of to discover and reveal their materialities and the impacts of their existence regarding the territory.
So as Daniela was saying, we are wondering where are all those selfies, memes and tweets that we are currently tweeting or like all the information that is moving around the clouds. Where are those clouds? What footprints do they leave on the ground? How can we make their materialities and geographies visible? Sorry. So our project, now you can hear me. So our project, The Fallen Clouds, is a speculative narrative that follows like this digital cloud in its quest to find its body and origin, extended from the Pacific Ocean to the Atacama Desert. And in the journey, it becomes entangled with human and more than human beings that are affected by its presence, from algae and crabs in the bottom of the ocean to an ecofeminist group in Cerrillo, Santiago, which is fighting against the new Google data center that will use like 169 liters per second to cool down its servers, which is like all the use of water of that place that place uses for a year. So it's like really intensifying the drought of that city, the city of Santiago. And we are also working with Licanantite communities in the north of Chile, which are also affected by the use of water for lithium extraction. And lithium is part of the batteries that are in the computers, in the cell phones that we continuously use. So the idea is that through that journey, we can, in a way, make visible the different materialities and peoples and places that are involved in the digital that seems to be floating, but it's actually grounded on Earth and in different times and spaces. And this narrative takes the form of an atmospheric installation that it's over there. You can go and see it. And it's composed by different floating sculptures that are made of the different materialities of the clouds, from minerals to different pieces of cables. And also it is composed of a projection of a film that it's about that depicts the journey of this cloud from the different places. And the idea is like you go there and you can like immerse in a deep listening process where you can connect with the different materialities and histories and myths that are part of this cloud.
And this project is still ongoing process of development. We are still working with the clouds, trying to find more of the materialities. Through this journey, they have discovered they are not ethereal, but they actually have a real physical body. And in this journey, we also are working with a very talented woman. Josefina is the creator of the project. I'm the producer. Francisca Saez is also here, is our director of photography. We're working with Nicole Lullier, who's our sound designer, and also Poli Mujica, who is a tech producer and artist. So thanks for coming, and we're going to be here trying to answer any questions or comments you have on our project. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. And now, last but not least, we have the microbiome crew, I guess represented by Taro. Thanks.
Good. Hello, my name is Taro. I'm part of the Mycelium Network Society, which is international and also part of the so-called InfoLab. It's an artist-run space called Stadtwerkstatt in Linz, Austria. As I prefer to work in collaboration with others, I came here to Sevilla with a collective consisting of Eva, Nastya from Kersnikova Institute in Ljubljana, Slovenia, and also Martyna from Linz. It's a very strange name. ML stands for Mycologic. It's a series of projects or attempts to interact with our fungal cohabitants. Isolationism is a term According to the International Encyclopedia of Social Sciences, isolationism has been defined as a policy or doctrine of trying to isolate from the affairs of others by declining to enter into alliances, foreign economic commitments, international agreements, and generally attempting to make one's economy entirely self-reliant, seeking to devote the entire efforts to its own advancement, both diplomatically and economically, while remaining in a state of peace by avoiding foreign entanglements and responsibilities. In this way, the isolationism project is a combine of different species of fungal mycelium together with locally extracted material and organisms like plants, mosses, soil, bacteria, the local microbiome, but also plastic trash, electronic trash, and crude oil. Hermetically contained, isolated, locked down in plexispheres, occupying time and position in space, all individual and independent, subsisting, dying, changing, stabilizing, morphing. Isolationism is the law. Isolation under will. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So that was the last presentation. Thank you, really, everyone, all the artists that you took time to prepare the presentations and the stories to share with us. And I'm pretty sure that I should get off the stage because we have the keynote upcoming. So yeah, thank you everyone also for listening. And if you are not overheated, please stay for the keynote. It should be really good.